Okay, so hi, my name is Julia, and I am someone that has completed Classics 2MT3 and 3MT3, and I am in no way a language student. I'm in life science, and my brain works in a very scientific way. Um, so today I'm going to show you this table. This is probably the most useful table I ever found in my Medterm notes, because it's just really useful, and I'm going to tell you why. The reason I'm making this video is because I would show it to my friends and they wouldn't understand how it worked. It took me a long time to figure out how it worked, and when I did, it simplified things so much. So I wanted to make a video about it so that you all could understand how easy it can be. What this table basically tells you is, or helps you figure out, is the gender of a Latin word. So for example, masculine, feminine, neuter, if it's singular or plural, and what sort of ending you should give either an adjective or a noun in Latin. And if it doesn't give you the entire answer right away, it will definitely help eliminate other answers for you so that if you're doing multiple choice, you will have a higher chance of getting the answer correct. So here goes. When you first look at this table, when I first looked at this table, I kind of looked at it and was scared because it was just a bunch of letters and it didn't make sense to me. But the key thing you have to remember with this table, I think, is the columns here at the top. So we have a noun column. If the word you're looking at is a noun, focus on this column. Don't look at the other two. If the word you're looking at is an adjective, then you have to figure out what kind of adjective it is. Adjective 1 or adjective 2. And I'm going to show you how to do that. So I think the best way to learn how to actually use this table is to kind of just go through examples in real time. So we're going to start with our first Latin term. We have musculi cervical, and then the ending, which we have to figure out what it is. So in these situations, the first thing I always do is I never look at what I don't know. I look at the word I do know, the one that we have the ending to. So in this case, it is musculi. Musculi, let's say we don't know whether it's singular or plural at this point. We just know it means the muscle or the muscles. But we do know that it is a noun because of that. It's also the first word that is a noun in Latin, so it should be a noun. So we know that musculi is a noun. And we see that the ending of musculi is an I. So now we're going to go over to our table and look for that. So we've determined that musculi is a noun. That means we only need to look at the noun column over here. And we're going to look for the ending I, because it's musculi. And if you look through, we see that this only happens in one place, right over here. And if we look at the row that corresponds to this, we see that musculi is masculine plural. Great, so now we know that musculi is masculine plural. This also means that we now know that cervical has an ending that is masculine plural because it is an adjective. And the adjectives in Latin have the same ending as the noun that they modify. So cervical is modifying the noun musculi, therefore it also has a masculine plural ending. But in this case, cervical is an adjective, and we know that. And it ends in al, right before its actual ending. So if we go to our table, we're looking at the adjective columns now, because as I just said, cervical is an adjective. We need to decide if it's an adjective 1 or an adjective 2. So we have us, adjectives, and we have al, are adjectives. So the way I decide which one goes where is I say, okay, is there an al or are near the end of the word? If there is, it's an adjective 2. If there is not, it's an adjective 1. In this case, we do have the al right near the end. So we're going to classify it as an adjective 2. And we're only going to be looking at this column. Because we just did all that work with the noun, we know that it is masculine plural. So we look at where the row and the column line up. And that is right over here at the ending es. So this table has just now told us that the answer to this is musculi cervicalis. And it's that simple. So let's do another example. So same noun actually, musculi. So we know, because we already did all the legwork on that it is masculine and plural, and a noun. Now we have another adjective. and it ends in "-ac" right before the actual ending. So if we go back to our table, we see, okay, it ended with "-ac" right before the ending. That's not "al" or "ar." So we're going to say it's a type 1 adjective, and we're only going to look at this column. We know that it was masculine plural because of all the work we did with the noun, and where those two meet is at the ending "-i". So the answer to this is musculi cardiaci. Pretty simple, right? Okay, another example. Now, this is different. What I've done here is we now have all the information we need from the adjective, but we don't know the ending to the noun. So, again, you start with what you know, and in this case, we don't know the noun, but we know the adjective. So let's start there. So, this is an adjective, and we look at the end. It ends in "e", and there is an "al" before the "e". So we're basically just going to do the same thing, just the opposite. So let's go to our table. We know it's an adjective. We need to determine what kind. As I mentioned before, there was an "al" here, so it's an "al-ar" adjective, type 2. So this is the column we're going to focus on. Then we notice that the ending is an "e", as I said before. So we're going to go through this column and look for the "e". And it occurs here, once. So that means that if we look at the row this corresponds to, it is telling us that this ending is neuter singular. This boy over here is neuter singular. So we know that this is an adjective modifying this noun, so that means that this noun is also neuter singular. So we go back here, we look at our noun column, and we look at our neuter singular, we see that it corresponds to this ending. So the answer is ligamentum gastrolineale. I'm not sure if I said that right, but you get the idea. So here is our last example. And it is one of the ones that is a little more complicated. So we start with what we know, right? And that's vena. It's a noun, the vein, or the veins. We don't know if it's singular or plural yet, even though you could probably guess. And it ends in A. So it's a noun and ends in A. We go to our table. We go to the noun column, and we look for the ending A. Now what we see here is that there are two. There's one here, and there's one here. So this means that this noun is either neuter plural or feminine singular. How do you know, though, which one it is? It's not both. It's either one or the other. So which one is it? Well, there are two things you can do to try and figure this out. The first is go back to your term. Now, if you're lucky, sometimes what might happen is there might be an extra adjective in this term. And if there is, you can look at the end of that adjective and try and figure out what it is, and therefore what the ending of the noun is. But we don't in this case. Unfortunately, the other thing you have to do is just kind of know. Like for me, I know this is feminine. And it's just like a thing you need to sort of get in the headspace of, and as you do more practice, you will get there. But a slide that I found to be really helpful with this was this one. Not this one, this one. Basically, it gives you a bunch of nouns. These are all nouns, and they're all singular in their singular form. And you've got your masculines, your feminines, and your neuters. So we see vena over here in the feminine. This is a really good slide to have and just like look at every once in a while, because it'll just be really helpful if you can see a noun and be like, oh yeah, I know that's feminine, or oh yeah, I know that's neuter, and all that stuff. So you kind of just have to know in this case that vena is feminine. So of the two options, we do know it's feminine. That means it's not neuter plural. It is feminine singular. Hi, future Julia here. I forgot to mention, but in the case that you never actually figure out, like say you're taking a test and you never figure out whether it's feminine singular or neuter plural, this is still really important to do because it helps you eliminate all of the other options. Oftentimes, Dr. Russell's tests are multiple choice. This will help you eliminate like so many multiple choice, and the ones you're left with will give you a higher chance of getting it correct. Also, hold off on answering and look through the rest of the test, because oftentimes the same noun will appear over and over again, and that will give you a clue as to what gender and number the noun itself is. So it's possible that you could solve the question by looking at other questions on your test. Just a quick pro tip. Oh, okay, back to the video. Okay, so if that's the case, then that also means this adjective is feminine singular, and we see that it is an al-ar adjective. So we go to the al-ar adjectives column, we look at feminine singular and see where the two line up, and that is at the ending is. So the answer to this one is vena lingualis. Super simple. Yeah, so I do want to throw out a little disclaimer though, because there are lots of exceptions to this, because, you know, it's a language. There will always be exceptions. So, for example, this is just one example, we have the nouns ductus and sinus. As I'm sure you might have already learned, ductus and sinus are the same plural as they are singular. So, ductus as singular is ductus, and ductus is plural is also ductus, which doesn't line up with this table, because if ductus were plural, it would have to be ducti, and it's not. It's an exception. So you have to familiarize yourselves with the exceptions, some of which you can see here in red, and understand that sometimes this table will not be the right option for you, and you just have to know the exceptions. But if you practice enough and keep a tally of what is an exception, then when you arrive at something you don't know, but you know is not an exception, you can definitely use this table for it. And I found this table to be really, really useful. I would literally memorize it, write it down when I first got my test, and then I would do my test and refer to the table as I went. So yeah, thanks for listening. I hope this was helpful.